By now, you've likely heard that President Trump sat down with Meet the Press over the weekend. And if you're not like me and you didn't watch or listen to the full hour-long interview, all you've probably heard from that interview is a few-second clip where President Trump is asked whether he has to uphold the Constitution, and the media frames it as if he said, "I don't know." But as is usually the case with Donald Trump and the media, there is more to the story. So first things first, in that same interview, Donald Trump explicitly says that everything he says is subject to him upholding the law 100%.
The law says you can't do this. Do you think you're following the law?
Well, I tell you, I'm going to just follow what the lawyers say. They say that we're allowed to do that, and I'm all for it. But everything I say is subject to the laws being 100% adhered to.
He explicitly says that he is going to uphold the law 100% of the time, which really shouldn't be a surprise to anyone if you've been paying attention, because in fact, Donald Trump and his administration have repeatedly said that they will listen to all of the court rulings, that they will abide by all the court rulings, they will appeal where necessary. They will take it all the way up to the Supreme Court when necessary, but they have repeatedly said that they will abide by court rulings. So again, this shouldn't really be a shock to you, but of course the media isn't going to take that second clip where he's talking about how he's going to abide by the law 100% of the time, right? And this clip that went viral where President Trump was asked, do you have to uphold the Constitution? And the media is framing it as if his answer was, I don't know, period. This was following about a 5 to 7 minute exchange regarding Kilmar Abrego Garcia and what is due process for an illegal alien. And what President Trump repeatedly said during that exchange, is that he is not a lawyer and that he has a very good team of people, well-versed, well-educated in the law, who are advising him on all of these matters. That is what he meant by I don't know. Because in fact, there is a question of what is due process for an illegal alien. Is an illegal alien entitled to a trial? Every single illegal alien, a trial with a jury of his peers? What is due process for an illegal alien? Because in fact, we do have laws like the Alien Enemies Act, which allow us to facilitate the removal of a large number of people who are invaders to this country. So not everything is so cut and dried, right? There are questions of legality and how to interpret the law and even how to interpret SCOTUS rulings. Because again, there's a question on this SCOTUS ruling regarding Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And this is another thing that Donald Trump brings up in this exchange, but people don't want to talk about that. When you read the SCOTUS ruling, and I made a video on this yesterday, it is not a decisive, unanimous victory for Kilmar Abrego Garcia or the Democrats carrying water for him. What the SCOTUS ruling says, and it's 4 pages, you can read it, is that the Trump administration must facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, but, this is a big but, what is meant by facilitate, SCOTUS says, is unclear. Legally, it's unclear. And so this lower judge needs to specify what is meant by facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And in fact, this judge, depending on what they meant by facilitate, might be overstepping their bounds. The Supreme Court says that. The Supreme Court says this judge has to specify what is meant by facilitate with due regard to the authority that the executive, not the judicial, the executive has in matters of foreign affairs. So that is anything but a decisive victory. It's essentially saying almost nothing. Trump has to facilitate the return, but what do we mean by facilitate? We don't really know. You might be overstepping your bounds with what you mean by facilitate, so make it more clear and understand that you don't have authority in this matter. The executive branch does. That's really not a decisive victory. So when Donald Trump repeatedly in this exchange, 5 to 7 minute exchange, says, I don't know, and he says it a few times, what he's saying is, I'm not a lawyer. And he says that a few times. So he doesn't mean he does not know whether he took an oath to uphold the Constitution. Clearly, he knows that. What he means is, I don't know that we did anything to subvert the Constitution. I don't think that we did. My lawyers have a different interpretation of that SCOTUS ruling than the one you're laying out here. That is what he is saying. But of course, the media doesn't want you to know that, and they're banking on the fact that most people aren't going to watch or listen to the full hour-long interview. And in fact, this is one of the reasons, and this seems to be an unpopular opinion, but this is one of the reasons I think President Trump should stop giving these exclusive one-on-one sit-downs with these media outlets who hate him. He should stop doing that. He should continue to be the most transparent administration in history, take questions from every single media outlet, make them look like the fools that they are in these press conferences, that's where he really shines. But when he does these one-on-one exclusive interviews, he is giving them exactly what they want. They want the exclusivity. They want to break news. And in fact, this woman got to break news during this Meet the Press interview, and that's what they love. And they also want to spin the narrative. And Donald Trump allows them to do that when he gives them these exclusive sit downs. It seems to me like Donald Trump is an old school guy. He was beloved by the media for so long. And I think there's still something in him that is seeking their approval as much as he calls them out. And I just don't think that these one-on-one interviews are the way to go, because the reality is most Americans are not going to watch the full thing. They're going to see the few-second clip that goes viral, and it's exactly the clip that the media wants you to see. That's just my opinion, but either way, now you know the full truth. Donald Trump is upholding the law. Donald Trump wants to uphold the law. Donald Trump wants to uphold the Constitution. It's just that there are questions of legality here, which is why we have lawyers, and not all of us are lawyers. And Donald Trump himself admits that he's not a lawyer. That's really the whole story here, but that's not quite as terrifying as the idea that we have a commander-in-chief who does not know whether he has to uphold the Constitution. So there you have it.
That the Attorney General will be doing the right thing.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says
I don't know. It might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth. Some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.